Welcome to this quiet space as the world outside begins to slow down and the shadows stretch long across the earth. I invite you to settle in, letting go of the rushing currents of the day. Just allow your breathing to deepen, drawing in the cool, still air of the evening and exhaling any tension you might be holding in your shoulders, your jaw, your mind. The night is a time for quiet reflection, a time when the noise of the bustling world fades into a soft, distant murmur. Tonight, we are going to journey together into a space of understanding, exploring a concept that often feels distant or hidden behind heavy velvet curtains. We will look at the architecture of wealth, not with urgency, but with the calm, steady gaze of a quiet observer, watching a deep river flow endlessly toward the sea. There is a certain stillness that comes with unimaginable resources. For most, life is a constant motion, an exchange of energy and labor for the necessities of the day, a turning wheel that never quite comes to rest. But high above that spinning wheel, in the quietest altitudes of finance, the air is very still. Here, we find a philosophy of preservation, a gentle, almost invisible method of holding on to value as time passes. It is a strategy spoken of in the hushed corridors of old estates and towering glass monoliths. A rhythm of three simple words: buy, borrow, die. It sounds almost like the natural cycle of a forest, drawing life from the soil, bending in the wind, and eventually returning to the earth. And in many ways, it is exactly that. A careful cultivation of resources that allows the wealthiest among us to move through the world entirely untouched by the burdens that weigh upon the rest. Let us begin at the very root of this quiet forest, with the simple act of acquiring, the decision to buy. Imagine a vast, sweeping landscape, rolling hills covered in rich, fertile soil. To the ultra-wealthy, buying is not about consumption. It is not the fleeting joy of acquiring a shiny new object that will dull with time. No, buying is the planting of an ancient seed, an oak tree that will stand for generations. They acquire assets, pieces of the world that possess a quiet, enduring gravity. Real estate that catches the morning sun across decades. Shares in the towering engines of global industry. Rare art that rests silently in climate-controlled vaults, breathing softly in the dark. These are not things meant to be traded away in a panic. They are meant to be held, gathered like heavy stones to build a great, unmoving fortress. As the years drift by, like clouds passing over a mirrored lake, these assets begin to grow. They swell in value, quietly, invisibly. A painting resting in a vault does not labor. A sprawling estate overlooking the ocean does not toil in the midday sun. They simply exist. And in their quiet existence, they gather worth. The world moves around them. Economies rise and fall like the tides of a restless ocean. But the wealth remains anchored, deep and secure. For the ordinary person, An increase in value often means a time to sell, a time to harvest the crop and pay the toll that society demands, the tax upon the harvest. But in the rarefied air of the ultra-rich, the harvest is never reaped. To sell is to invite a transaction, and transactions invite a loss of that gathered energy, a loss to taxation. So, they do not sell. They simply watch the forest grow. There is a profound patience in this approach, a serene detachment from the need for immediate gratification. Imagine standing at the edge of that mirrored lake, watching the water level slowly rise, year after year, fed by hidden springs deep beneath the surface. You do not need to drink from the lake to know it is there. Its presence alone provides a deep, unwavering comfort. This is the essence of the first pillar. It is the art of accumulation without disruption. A quiet gathering of the world's fabric, folding it neatly and placing it in a cedar chest, keeping it safe from the moths of taxation and the rust of inflation. The wealthiest families do not measure time in days or weeks, or even financial quarters. They measure time in lifetimes, in the slow, glacial shifting of eras. And so, their assets sit, basking in the warmth of appreciating value, shielded from the harsh winds of the open market. But you might wonder, as you rest here in the quiet dark, how does one live if they never sell the fruits of their orchard? How do they acquire the beautiful things of the world, the yachts that glide silently across turquoise waters, the private jets that slip quietly through the stratosphere, the sprawling villas bathed in the golden light of the Mediterranean sun? If the wealth is locked away, growing silently in the dark, where does the water come from to nourish their daily lives? It is a natural question, one that rises gently like mist off the lake in the early morning. The answer lies in the beautiful illusion of the second pillar, a mechanism so elegant and quiet, it makes barely a ripple on the surface of their vast oceans of wealth. It is the gentle art of borrowing, not as a heavy burden, but as a feather-light tool. But before we drift into that second phase, let us just linger here for a moment longer, in the peaceful shade of the great growing forest. Feel the deep, slow rhythm of this unhurried world, a world where nothing is rushed, where wealth is a heavy, warm blanket that insulates against the chill of uncertainty. Let your own breathing match this slow, deliberate pace. Inhale the calm stability of the ancient oak. Exhale the fleeting worries of the day. There is no need to hurry. The assets are secure. The vaults are locked. The land remains steady beneath our feet. The strategy of the ultra-rich begins with this fundamental stillness, this unwavering commitment to simply hold and wait and watch the horizon. As you lie there, perfectly still, imagine yourself possessing that same boundless patience, allowing life to unfold, without the need to grasp or control or sell. Just being, just growing, in the quiet, undisturbed peace of the night. And as that night deepens, we find ourselves drawn slowly to the edge of the great, quiet forest of your wealth, where the still, solid earth meets the soft, murmuring flow of water. This is the river of liquidity, the second pillar of this grand, silent architecture. It is time to explore the gentle art of borrowing, not as the world knows it, but as it exists in the hushed, rarefied atmosphere of the ultra-rich. For most who walk the earth, the word debt carries a heavy, exhausting weight. It is a stone placed upon the chest in the dark hours of the night, a tight tether that binds the mind to anxiety and endless toil. It is a burden of the future, weighing down the present. But as we drift higher, into the quiet altitude of immense wealth, debt sheds its heavy cloak. It transforms completely, becoming something entirely different. It becomes a silver thread, light as gossamer, floating effortlessly on the evening breeze. Imagine the vast estate you have built in your mind, the towering trees of your investments, the deep, unmovable bedrock of your assets. To live comfortably, to travel across the tranquil oceans, to experience the boundless beauty of the world, you do not need to cut down these magnificent trees. You do not need to harvest the timber. For the moment you swing the axe, the moment you decide to sell an asset, you awaken the sleeping giant of taxation. Taxation is the friction of financial movement. It is the toll extracted when wealth changes its shape, when an asset is broken apart and converted into income. But what if the wealth never changes shape? What if the asset remains perfectly untouched, sleeping peacefully in its secure vault, continuing to grow in the dark? Instead of selling, the ultra-wealthy simply walk into the quiet, marble-floored halls of their private institutions, and they offer a gentle promise. They point to their great, sprawling forest, secure and thriving in the sunlight, and they ask for a small, quiet stream of water to be diverted to their gardens. The institution, seeing the immense, undeniable strength of the untouched forest, happily obliges. They extend a line of credit, a loan, secured by the very assets that continue to sleep. This money flows into their lives not as income, but as a borrowed resource. And in the eyes of the law, in the vast, infinitely complex ledgers of the tax code, a loan is not income. It is entirely invisible. It passes through the gates without ringing a single bell, without triggering a single alarm. No tax is owed. Not a single leaf falls from the tree. The giant sleeps on, undisturbed. Let that realization wash over you now, like a cool, calming wave on a quiet shore. Breathe in the elegant simplicity of this design, and as you exhale, breathe out the heavy, complicated burdens of your own daily ledgers. Feel how profoundly light it is to simply borrow against the strength of what already exists, without ever disturbing its deep, enduring peace. The cost of this gentle stream, the interest on the loan, is remarkably small. For those who hold mountains of wealth, the rates are whispered, microscopic, a mere fraction of a percent. It is a tiny, insignificant droplet given back to the river, while the great forest of assets continues to grow. The investments in the background, the quiet shares of companies, the timeless pieces of art, the sprawling real estate, they continue to swell in value, expanding in the warmth of the sun, growing at a steady pace that far outstrips the tiny trickle of interest owed. The wealth is actually increasing, even as it is being spent. It is a perpetual motion machine of prosperity, silently, effortlessly turning in the background of a beautiful life. Imagine living in a state where your resources are quietly replenishing themselves, far faster than you could ever deplete them. It is a feeling of absolute, unwavering security, a safety net woven so thickly that you cannot even see the ground beneath it. With this invisible, untaxed stream of borrowed capital, the ultra-rich surround themselves with the calm beauty of the world. A secluded home on a quiet, sun-drenched coast, where the waves lap gently against the stone. A beautiful vessel that glides smoothly across the deep, mirrored surface of the sea. A rare painting that captures the golden light of dusk just so. All of it enjoyed, all of it experienced, all of it paid for with borrowed money. Completely and utterly free from the heavy hand of income tax. As you listen to the steady, unhurried rhythm of my voice, allow your own body to feel that profound sense of financial weightlessness. Imagine unhooking the heavy anchors of your daily obligations. Let them slip from your grasp, watching as they sink away into the dark, quiet depths far below you. You are floating now, drifting on the calm surface of a vast, tranquil lake, supported entirely by the unseen, immeasurable depths beneath you. You do not need to paddle. You do not need to struggle. You are simply carried by the gentle current. This is the pure essence of the borrow phase. It is the absolute mastery of flow. It is the quiet understanding that you do not need to consume your foundation to enjoy the magnificent view from the balcony. You simply let the foundation stand, tall, proud, and untouched, and allow it to cast a long, protective shadow over everything you do. You live in the shade of your own success, nourished by a stream that never runs dry and never alerts the tax collector. The days turn softly into years, and the years melt seamlessly into decades. The forest grows thicker, its roots reaching deeper into the earth. The stream of borrowed water continues to flow, sustaining a life of quiet, unburdened peace. The tax remains at zero. The wealth remains perfectly undisturbed, growing silently in the background of a life well lived. But as with all things in this beautiful, temporary world, the passage of time is inevitable. The seasons slowly turn. The leaves begin to change their colors, and the long, golden afternoon of life begins to ease toward the horizon, toward the soft, beautiful colors of the setting sun. And as the twilight approaches, the grand architecture of this strategy prepares for its final, most graceful maneuver. The evening air grows cool and still, settling softly over the vast estate of your life's work. The stars begin to emerge, one by one, piercing the deep indigo of the night sky, like tiny beacons of permanence in a changing world. You have spent a lifetime building this sanctuary, nurturing the roots of your fortune, allowing the branches to stretch high into the clouds. You have borrowed the water, enjoyed the shade, and lived beautifully without ever diminishing the soil beneath you. And now, as the gentle sleep of time approaches, the true brilliance of this grand design reveals itself. In the ordinary world, the passing of an estate often brings a storm of obligation, a heavy toll extracted from the fruits of a lifetime. But in this elevated realm, the transition is as smooth as a river finally meeting the sea. When the original architect of the wealth rests, closing their eyes to the vibrant colors of the waking world, the strategy executes its ultimate phase, the phase of leaving, of passing the torch without ever letting the flame burn the hand that holds it. There is a quiet rule written into the intricate codes of the system, a rule that acts as a magical, cleansing rain. It is called the step-up in basis. Imagine it as a gentle, sweeping breeze that moves through the forest at the exact moment of transition. This breeze carries away all the history of growth, all the decades of accumulated gains. If an asset was planted long ago as a single, tiny seed, and has since grown into a massive, towering oak, the law simply looks at the oak as it is today and declares that this is its new starting point. The long journey from the seed to the tree is entirely forgotten by the ledger. The invisible burden of potential tax, the shadow that follows all financial growth, is wiped away in an instant. It is like a fresh snowfall in the deep of winter, settling quietly over the uneven ground, covering the tracks of the past and leaving only a smooth, pristine surface. The heirs step onto this new snow, inheriting the vast forest exactly as it stands, magnificent and whole, with a completely clean slate. The historical gains have simply evaporated into the cool night air, leaving absolutely no trace behind. But what of the borrowed streams, the gentle loans that sustained those peaceful decades of living? These silent debts remain, waiting patiently in the quiet corners of the estate. They must be balanced. The scales must find their perfect equilibrium once more. And so, the heirs perform a simple, painless task. They gather a small portion of the wealth, perhaps a few sturdy branches from the edge of the endless woods, and they return them to the marketplace. Because the snow has just fallen, because the value of these branches was just reset to this exact moment. There is no difference between their new value and the price they are sold for. They are sold at their newly stepped-up basis, which means there is no capital gain. And without a gain, there is no tax to be paid. The branches are exchanged for the exact amount needed to settle the loans. The borrowed water is returned to its source. The banks are quietly repaid, and the ledgers are closed with a soft, satisfying click. The tax collector is left with nothing to claim, for the math perfectly balances at zero. It is a masterpiece of financial poetry, a symphony that resolves its final chord in perfect harmony. The debt is gone. The tax is zero. And the vast majority of the wealth remains completely untouched, standing tall and proud in the morning light, ready to shelter the next generation. The heirs now walk through the same tranquil gardens, resting in the shade of the very same trees. The foundation you built has become their solid ground. They too can watch the assets grow. They too can borrow from the flowing stream, living peacefully, silently, without ever disturbing the principle. The cycle begins anew, a beautiful, endless rotation of growth, borrowing, and eventual resetting. As you listen to these words, let your own mind drift into that space of perfect equilibrium. Feel the profound sense of security that comes from knowing a foundation is secure, that the architecture of your own peace is built to last. Let go of the need to constantly strive, to constantly harvest, to constantly worry about the tolls and taxes of daily life. Instead, imagine yourself resting on that wide, sunlit balcony, looking out over a landscape that requires nothing from you but your quiet appreciation. The air is soft and cool against your skin. The sounds of the world are muffled and distant, replaced by the gentle rustling of leaves and the continuous, soothing murmur of the stream. You do not need to figure it all out tonight. You do not need to build the entire forest before you sleep. You only need to rest, knowing that there are systems of peace, rhythms of preservation, that flow naturally when we stop trying to force them. Allow the concept of the clean slate to wash over your mind. Whatever debts of energy you have accumulated today, whatever heavy burdens you carry from the past, let them experience their own gentle resetting. Let the fresh snow fall over your thoughts, covering the tracks of yesterday, wiping the ledger of your worries completely clean. You are starting fresh, right here, in this peaceful moment. You owe nothing to the past. You are simply here, whole and perfectly complete. The night deepens, wrapping you in its warm, protective embrace. The forest of your mind grows quiet and still. The stream flows on, carrying away the last remnants of tension, leaving only a deep, abiding calm. The strategy is complete. The cycle is fulfilled. The ledger is balanced, and all is well. Drift now into the soft, welcoming shadows of sleep. Drift into the quiet certainty of rest, where nothing is owed, nothing is taxed, and everything you need is already yours. Rest in the deep, undisturbed peace of the night. Sleep, and let the quiet current carry you gently into tomorrow.